Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Mohawk Motors. My name is Jason. We're getting back to work on a fun project. I left off on this one last year, had it running driving. Now we're going to pick back up on it. I've got two small things that were really nagging at me and bothering me. I finally figured those out, I think. And then we're going to do a budget, what I think should be significant performance upgrade on this thing. Can you guess which project we're working on? It's the blue single cab short bed. If you've been following along, or if you've been a subscriber for a while, you know this is a 2007 Silverado Classic, 1500, obviously, regular cab short bed. I bought the truck as a V6 truck. It is two-wheel drive, 4L60, but it did have a 4.3 liter V6. And I wanted to find out, one, if I could more efficiently convert one of these trucks to V8, but also what I was really curious about is an aluminum V8 the same weight, lighter, heavier than the iron block 4.3 that was in here. So I swapped in this aluminum block L33 5.3 V8. Found out along the way that it is in fact lighter than the 4.3, not to mention the power increase. And I'm really happy with this swap. Like, overall, it came out very clean. If you didn't know better, I think most people would think this is the factory engine to the truck. But there's been two little issues that have been nagging at me since I got done the swap. The first was it has had a slow weeping coolant leak. And I mean, if I leave it parked someplace for a week, there'd be 2 or 3 drops on the ground. Maybe, you know, like a little, the shape enough that you could fit it inside of your two fingers touching together. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I think I finally found it. And the other thing I'll get into once I get it up in the air, but it's been making a weird noise intermittently. It's something electronic. It sounds like a little like diaphragm pump plunger or something like that. I could not figure out what it was. I think I've maybe figured that out as well. But we're gonna fix the coolant leak first, and then we're gonna see if my theory, what I think I figured out, is correct about that noise. So this truck has been parked over in the storage side of the workshop since we moved up here in October. And every time I've moved it or looked under it, I've noticed again, like a teeny little puddle of coolant. And I've been looking and looking and looking, and I just couldn't find any wet spots, but I didn't have time to actually bring it over here in the shop or have good light now and really try to figure out where the leak is on this thing. And I think I finally found it. This engine, I believe, has been remanufactured at some point. It's got barcodes on it from like a engine rebuilding servicing company. And the truck it was in was too high of mileage for me to think that it was the original engine. And everything about this one, how clean it is, seeing the other, like, I'm fairly confident it was a remanufactured engine. And whoever installed this thing, they created this leak inadvertently. I'm gonna see if I can get you close enough in here to see it. So if you can see, right down just behind that upper belt tensioner bolt, there's the teeniest little puddle sitting in that casting in the engine block. And if you look right between the engine block and the water pump, you see that black? That is a paper gasket. Now, I'm not saying paper gaskets don't work. But that's where my coolant leak is. I can follow where the putt drip on the floor lands, the trail of water, all the way up to right there where that little puddle is. So I'm 99.9% sure that's my coolant leak. And whoever put that, I don't know if the engine came with that water pump on it or if the person installed it put that on it, but why? Why would you use a paper gasket? We have better technology. It's right here. There's the aluminum and rubber gaskets that these engines come with from the factory. GM has known for years, paper is outdated, you don't need it. I've got a new set of water pump gaskets. So I'm gonna drain the coolant, take the water pump off, replace those water pump gaskets, and put it all back together. At least for me, this is an electric fan truck, so there's lots of room in the front here. I can pull the serpentine belt, pull the water pump, and then stick it back together. I'm gonna try to do it without disconnecting all my hoses, but we'll see how that works out. All right, so first step, get the serpentine belt off. We've got our tensioner right down here, 15mm bolt poking out the front of it. See if I can do this one-handed. Get on the tensioner, push it down. Oh, come on. You're almost there. Slip your belt off of your idler pulley. The belt comes right out of the way. Not too difficult there. Ba-ba. So I looked at it again. This radiator, of course, doesn't have a drain in it. I want to try to catch what antifreeze, what coolant is left, and put it back in. So I am going to have to disconnect the hoses, both the heater hoses and the lower radiator hose. To do that, fortunately, these are still the factory spring clamps on there. So get some pliers. I am going to take the intake tube off out of the way. It's just 2 flathead worm screws, and then we'll get those coolant lines disconnected. Here we go. I've got nice clean drain pan. I only use this one for antifreeze. I cleaned off my big drain pan expander. Like I said, I want to try to reuse as much of this as I can catch. And try not to make a gigantic mess on the floor. Wow, could you even see me? I'm sorry, I'm not good at multitasking. I'm probably still gonna make a huge mess, but hopefully we'll catch a lot of it. You know, a lot of people hate on these spring style clamps. To be honest with you, I prefer them. They're the biggest reason being, and a lot of people don't know this, all these pieces expand and contract, both through the heat cycles of the engine, but the heat cycles of just ambient air, you know, when it's cold in the winter, hot in the summer. And those spring clamps keep their tension throughout those heat cycles. Worm clamps, your traditional like hose clamps, once you tighten them, they don't compensate for temperature change, expansion, contraction, anything like that. So I like these better. You can see a little bit better down here now too. Antifreeze down here, here, little stream of it right up to the back of that head. So this water pump gasket is the one that was leaking. I wouldn't be surprised if the one on the other side is leaking also. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm gonna do these heater hoses first. Give her a little twist. There we go. All right, there's one. Sounds like most of it's going in the drain pan. Heck yeah, we're getting the majority of it. Lower radiator hose here. There we go, got that loose. Slowly. Okay. Oh, upper radiator hose. Almost forgot about that one. Durr. Okay, all our radiator hoses are off, serpentine belt is off. So now we'll do the 6 10mm bolts on each side and we'll pop this thing out of there. I'm gonna need both hands for that, so I'll bring you back once it's off. Guys, sometimes I just don't understand. So paper gaskets, like I pointed out, they went ahead and put silicone on the paper gaskets. Like, I get in some circumstances that you want the gasket to stick to a surface. They make like gasket tack products specifically for that job. But if you have to add something to your gasket to make the gasket seal, that's probably not the right gasket. There's probably a better option. And this is a perfect example. Well, you just use the aluminum and rubber gaskets and probably never would have had this problem. So I'm gonna get it fixed. I'm gonna get it all cleaned up. This almost looks like the back of the water pump is weeping a little bit too. Maybe, I'm not sure. I'm gonna get the gasket surfaces cleaned up, get the block prepped up, and then we'll get it back together with the good gaskets and have this problem solved. Well, water pump all cleaned up, engine block all cleaned up. Other nice thing about the rubber and aluminum gaskets, you don't have to scrape all the paper off when you replace them. They just come off. So now to put it back together. Assembly is reverse of disassembly. Water pump and bolts first, then hoses, then belt. I'll bring you back when I'm done. Well, it's all back together, folks. Really not a terribly difficult thing, just annoying. A better parts choice would have prevented that from ever being an issue. And I'm going to blame myself too, because I probably should have looked closer at this engine and done that, changed those gaskets before I even put it in the truck. But it is what it is, not a huge deal. So you can see I've got it running again. I'm going to heat cycle it, burp the cooling system, get all the air back out of it, and then we're going to lift it higher up in the air and see if my theory about this weird noise is accurate. I'll see, it might do it while it's running here, and I'll try to show you that noise. But yeah, I've got a road trip planned for this thing this coming up weekend, so I'm trying to get it all ready, make sure it's going to be the longest trip I've taken it on, so I want to be sure I'm not going to have any issues. All right, team, it's doing the noise. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? I think it might have something to do with like the evap system, the purge valve or something like that. So once I'm done burping the cooling system, I'm gonna start unplugging the evap stuff. The solenoid here at the top of the intake manifold, and there's also a little, I think it's an evap pump back at the fuel tank. I'm gonna unplug those and see if that stops the noise. I didn't even have to put it in the air, look. Hear the noise? Now it's gone. Making it? Now it's gone. So it is the evap system. So I'm gonna lift it up. I wonder if maybe I have a leak somewhere, or as this is pulsing, if maybe it's just vibrating against something and making that noise. So again, once I get the cooling system burped, I'm gonna lift it up and figure that out. See if I can't see an obvious problem underneath. All right guys, so I got the truck up in the air. I've just been going around, checking everything, making sure it all looks good. And then I decided, like I said, to see if I can find what might be causing that weird noise. And I think I found it. So, like I said before, this is an 07 Classic. So the only lines that run from the tank up to the engine are the fuel line, which is clearly marked by the hazard caution fuel sticker, and the evap purge line. And let's see if I can get it so you can see it here. But right up here on the purge line, where this little plastic clip goes around it, I can see that it's rusted through. Which I believe this is supposed to be a sealed system. The purpose of the evap purge is to suck any of the evaporated gas fumes out of the tank and burn them. But clearly that's not going to happen when there's a big hole in the line. So I'd be willing to bet that's why I'm getting that weird noise, because when the evap purge valve is cycling like this, instead of that vacuum being switched on and off and drawing from the fuel tank, it's just sucking through that hole. And that's why I'm hearing it. So it hasn't caused any issues so far. I live in a county that doesn't test emissions anymore. And it didn't cause any check engine lights or anything like that in the truck. So I think I'm just gonna leave the evap purge valve unhooked, and realistically what I'm gonna be doing to this truck in the future, we're not gonna need that anyway. We're not gonna need that where we are going. So I'm just gonna leave the purge valve unhooked while until I get into the more extensive upgrades I have planned for this truck, so I don't have to hear that annoying sound. Well, I've got the truck back down on the ground, fluids are all topped off, everything's good. I'm pretty sure it's ready for my road trip and ready for inspection. Now, I mentioned some performance upgrades. The first ones I'm gonna do, I want to be as simple, as close to bolt-in, if not bolt-in, and as inexpensive as possible. So the first thing I have for this truck, and I've actually had this for a while, I've been holding on to it, is a new rear. Now this is the same rear that's already in the truck. It's got drum brakes, G80 differential, same exact, it's the same rear. The only difference is this one has 410 gears in it. The truck right now has 323 gears in it, highway gears. But 410s, that should really pep this truck up getting off the line. And I want to see what kind of difference it makes, especially because, if you can find yourself a 410 rear in the junkyard, the U-Pull-It yard, the U-Pull-It's near me sell a complete rear end for $250. So, to upgrade yourself from 323s to 373s or 410s, or even from 373s to 410s, or whatever, to be able to swap that whole rear out, very simple, straightforward process, and $250 is not a huge investment. And I think we will gain a substantial amount of performance in the quarter mile with that. I want to take the truck out with my draggy before I do it and see what kind of quarter mile time it'll do. And then when we get back, I'll get this 410 rear swapped into it and we'll see what kind of difference that makes. And like I said, this should pretty much be a bolt-in swap. Spring mounts are the same. Shock mounts are the same. The drum brakes are the same. The only thing that I'm not 100% sure of is the pinion yoke. I think they're the same size. They might be different. If they are different, then I can swap the yoke off of the current rear onto this one and I'll be good to go also. And then you see the other parts in here. I've got some better shocks for the front. The transmission mount I bought, I've had for a while. I just need to put that away. And then I've got everything here to convert this rear end to disc brakes as well. The disc brake conversion will be a separate video. But I want to try to squeeze this one into this video, the 410 rear. What kind of performance change, what kind of performance improvement in a quarter mile run do we get from upgrading from 323s to 410 gears? So I'm excited. We'll get some before numbers and that'll give us our starting point. All right, folks. Well, we're out headed toward Mexico in the blue truck here. I want to get a baseline on this thing. Now, unfortunately, I cannot get my draggy to work. I don't know what the problem is with the thing. I've been in touch with their customer support and they've really been little to no help. And I don't want to buy another one, so I'm just going to use an app on my phone here and see if that'll give me anything worth going. For sake of trying to make this as consistent as possible, I'm just gonna go from 1 foot drive it, foot on the brake, to foot on the gas, and see how we do. Oh, unfortunately there's a car coming, so we're gonna wait until they get by and potentially just turn around and go the other way. This is a nice flat spot, so, and I think it's long enough. Okay, so, sake of consistency, I'm just going to power brake, stop, try to hold the brake up to 2,000 RPM, up to 1,500 RPM, and then, oh, spun, I did not expect that. Okay, one more time, and then we'll average them together and see what we get. I gotta say, I'm not optimistic about our ability to effectively put power on the ground, considering that it's spinning the tires with a 323 rear axle gear. So 410, it's going to become a challenge to actually put power down, I think. All right, one more time. Here we go. Yeah. The gov lock is trying. Let's go back, I'll look at the numbers, we'll average them out and see what we got. Alright guys, so I did some quick math and I wound up making 4 attempts. I averaged the 4, even though there was a clear, like my first attempt was my outlier. I decided to use those numbers anyway because they weren't so far out it was ridiculous. So 4 attempts, tracking 0 to 60, 1/8 mile time, and 1/4 mile time. And here's where we're at. Here's our starting point before we change the rear end. 0 to 60, average 6.75 seconds. 1/8 mile, average 9.86 seconds. 1/4 mile, 15.23 seconds. As you saw, I'm pretty sure I'm going to put the clips in, but that's spinning off the line. We're going to have trouble spinning more once we change to a steeper rear end here. So we'll have to try to figure that out. I think on a sticky surface it would be obviously a little bit faster on like a track with some prep. And I'm not upset about that. For a truck that I've literally done nothing to except swap in a V8 and maybe lighten it up by a few pounds. I think with the stuff we added compared to the weight we took out of it, we kind of broke even. So for a pretty stock truck, essentially, that's not terrible. Now that is a higher performing 5.3 than would have been a factory option. That's an L33, so it's about 100 pounds lighter than an L59 or an LM7 that you could have gotten it with from the factory. And I think they're about 25 or 30 more horsepower than the LM7 or the L59. So a little bit better than factory, but not disappointing by any means. So I think that's where I'm going to wrap up this portion of it. Next video on this truck, you'll see me get the rear end swapped. Like I said, we're going to put that 410 rear end in it. I'll probably put a fresh gear oil in that rear end because I don't know the history on it, and I just want to do a visual inspection before I go through all the trouble of bolting it into the truck. And then we'll try it out. We'll see what kind of actual real world difference just a $250 junkyard rear end can make if you're trying to go fast. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching, and until then, take care.